guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with episode 4 of our ongoing X-Files episodes. And today marks a special moment because we are officially, after this review, leaving disc 1. I kind of vaguely remember how that felt. First disc was Space 1999. It kind of felt like, okay, things going to start to get a rolling a little bit here. So we'll see. Disc 2 coming. Conduit dropped October 1st, 1993. Daniel Sackheim returns director, and but we do have some different writers on this one. Alex Gansa, Howard Gordon, so not Chris Gardner this time. Same director as Deep Throat, so that makes sense. This isn't that far off in terms of, you know, sort of the mythology building that is continuing. But here's some interesting things with the cast. Now, the story, this episode revolves around Conduit. It revolves around a mom, her son, and a daughter who is abducted, Ruby. Kevin is the boy, and Darlene, the Morris family. Carrie Snodgress, who plays Darlene, the mom, she was in, of all things, and I haven't seen this, but some of you might have. She was Augusta W. Gein in Ed Gein movie. Isn't that something? Joel Palmer, who plays Kevin, who is the Conduit. He was in Valentine, that slasher from 01. I think his name was Jeremy. And at a biker bar, we have none other than Don Gibb plays, his character's name is Kip. We know him, of course, from Bloodsport, Revenge of the Nerds. If you can't visualize him, one picture and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I remember him. Charles Cioffi returns as Scott Blevins. In fact, that's really the beginning of this show. The editor, James Koblenz, of this episode, People Under the Stairs, 91, Wes Craven film. Final Destination, edited Willard, the 03 film. This is Bartley returns as cinematographer. This is the first episode where Scully starts to believe that Mulder may not be the crackpot that everyone else is making him out to be. In fact, with Mulder, there is an extremely emotional ending to this episode. But let's pick up the pace a little bit here. We do find out, maybe some of the more interesting things we find out really relates to Samantha and her abduction. Of course, this is Mulder's sister, right? But this thunder, just heard some thunder. Hope everything doesn't shut off here in a second. The story, like I said, revolves around this family. The mom, back in 1967, had her own paranormal experience, witnessing a UFO of sorts when she was a Girl Scout. So this will haunt her, right? And now, all these years later, presumably we're talking 93, the daughter, the daughter's been recently abducted, and so this is an extreme trauma for the family, especially for the mom. Not that you've lost a daughter, but because of her past experience, it all sort of ties in here. And Kevin, we find out, the boy who, well, may not have seen his sister abducted, might have. I don't know if that's really ever clarified, but Mulder puts in for a case number on this. But this is the opening of the episode. Once we get out of the abduction scene, we get into Blevins having Scully there and trying to convince her that you really need to talk Mulder out of this, because this is a tabloid issue. Now, the abduction of Ruby is, of course, all over the tabloids, and Blevins believes the only reason why Mulder wants this is because of his connection to Samantha, which is an old X-File, which, by the way, is X-File 40253 is the case number, or the X-file number, for Samantha's abduction, which we do find out more about. So, but once, and so Scully is sort of sent by Blevins to sort of convince Mulder or reason with him why is this important, and when he shows her that Darlene had her own paranormal experience at the same place, I believe, same lake, Okoboji, I think it is. I didn't write it down. Okoboji, I think it is. And so she's presented enough surface level evidence that warrants her curiosity, at least I think, is piqued. And she knows Mulder by now already. We're only 4 episodes in, but his reputation and what she's already seen on these early case files, there's no real argument. They go. And so they interview the mom, of course, and they start to get her side of the story and what might have happened. And so the episode begins to unfold. Apparently, Kevin is, when they visit the house and mom tells them as well as she can the story, Kevin is sitting in front of a static-filled TV, just sort of writing numbers down. Almost looks like just like a data sheet or something. And this will come into play a little bit later. And Mulder tries to talk to him, and he doesn't really want to talk that much. But Mulder makes a copy of this just because he's curious. And unfortunately, when he sends it off, now he's already begun to build, him and Scully have begun to build up trust with the mom. This trust will be absolutely destroyed when the NSA realize that what they have here in this supposed data sheet it was a transmission from one of their defense satellites. Now this is highly classified information, material, whatever, and so before you know it, the NSA makes a house call to the Morris family. And let's just say this is one of the more unpleasant house calls. And this is the part of the apparatus of government that, and we've seen this just in the last, in the news in the last 10, 15, 20 years, overreaches where the government just, they could have wrong information and just barge into a house that ends up not being the right house and completely terrifies a family. And what do you do after that? It's not like you can sue the government. If you do, you're probably going to lose. And so they go in there and they make an absolute wreck of this house. And poor Kevin, they just destroy his room, breaking stuff. Just not caring at all. Mulder makes the comment, but he is already making enemies with members of the NSA here on this case specifically. And so Mom and Kevin will be taken off and interrogated, and thus Mulder and Scully will ultimately, I think they go to the biker bar where they meet Kip, who shows them a little damage around the ear, where out at the lake, he had his own paranormal experience. And so they decide, we're going to go up there. And it ends up being campsite 53, I think, is where the Morris family was. And so they visit that specific spot. And Mulder notices that top of the tree line is pretty much burned to a crisp. He finds shards of glass in the sand, and he begins to reason with Scully that something must have been hovering over with an extreme amount of heat, because it takes so much heat to cause sand to crystallize into glass, right? And then, of course, the top of the Morris RV is pretty much crisp, burnt toast like. And so, you start putting like something happened, right? By the time they're able to reconnect with Darlene, the mom, she, of course, after this horrific experience, doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Understandable, right? And so this pretty much, if I remember right, this pretty much leaves them without much. And I think as a last-ditch at first. Something else happens, and I'm sorry, I can't remember, but ultimately they go, maybe it's the run-in with the NSA. They decide to go back and make a house call on the Morris family, even though Scully's like, look, she's not going to talk to us. She doesn't want to have anything to do with us. And Mulder basically just like, look, it's up to you. You either come with me or you don't come with me, but I'm going. And so, he goes, but of course no one is there. And when, I can't remember, I think the door might have been ajar, or they go in and no one's home, but they see the things that he has been writing out, the numbers, which, by the way, they tried to do it when they were making this episode. They tried to do it utilizing a computer printer, but it was way too neat. And so they just, one of the people just did it by hand. It took them days. I mean, I can't even imagine. But Kevin's got them all laid out, right? And seemingly at first, when they walk in and they happen to see it, Mulder's can't really make sense of it. And yet when Scully decides to go upstairs to check out the rooms, she, from the top of the banister, looks down, and suddenly she's like, Mulder, get up here. Mulder comes up, and what we have is an image of Ruby via all the data that this boy's been receiving through the TV. All these pages basically create a picture. And so they decide to rush back out the lake, and when they do, they find the Morrises out there, the RV's out there, and lo and behold, Ruby is returned. Now, completely forgot, but tucked in with all of that, a girl shows up, Tessa, who tries to basically pass off this story to Mulder and Scully that Ruby was seeing her boyfriend. Well, she doesn't call him her boyfriend, but her and, I said Greg, I think is his name, Greg. Yeah, Greg Randall. So apparently they were having something, and Ruby got pregnant, and they were going to run off together. But what really ends up happening is, I'll leave that if you've never seen it, or you wanting to revisit it. I'll leave that one alone. I won't get into that one. But there is a sort of a story beneath the surface involving, there goes my power. You see that? I'm just going to wrap this up real quick. Ultimately, in the end, Ruby is given back, and all is well. I hear the scattering of my children running around up there. So, thunderstorm, I guess. We just lost power. So, ultimately, in the end, one thing I just want to say real quick, with Samantha, a lot comes up about Samantha, and we find out that the actual abduction of Samantha, which will be part of the heart and soul of the entire, X-Files with Mulder, takes place on January 22nd, 1964. She's only 8 years old when this happens, and so that would have been like 1972, right? Mulder is only 12 when this happens, and so by the time you get to the end of this episode, we're left with Scully listening to some tapes where Mulder had been put under hypnosis, recalling the events of that tragic night, and the closing scene of the episode, which is one of the more powerful moments, at least for me personally, is Mulder in a church weeping over a picture of Samantha. And we kind of just get this idea of just the hurt, the wrenching pain and hurt inside of him, which will carry all the way through to the concluding episode, I think, called The Truth, if I remember right. And so this abduction of his sister and this trauma that he has put through as a 12-year-old really fuels and drives him all the way through all of these, through the whole lore of the X-Files. So ultimately in the end, things are resolved. Ruby is given back, but the concluding time with Darlene is basically, look, I got my daughter back, leave us alone, and that's it. And Mulder's, of course, she's a witness to an abduction. She's her having been abducted is going to want to talk about it. And as far as Darlene is concerned, it's case of shut. She has her kids back, and that's it. Try to forget the whole thing, and that kind of rubs Mulder the wrong way. You can sort of understand why, knowing what has happened to him in the past. Anyhow, with that, man, with that, X-Files Conduit, what'd you think? Drop a comment, let me know. And next up, I do believe, first episode on disc 2, the Jersey Devil, maybe? I think that's where we're going. Anyhow, we always end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. We might be useful to you.